have one case of a man being wrongfully deported to El Salvador. We have probably many more. And with ICE breaking into people's homes, it's great to see someone in a position of power be like, no, we're upholding the law.
It's very telling with these ICE raids that many, if not all, of the ICE agents are showing up with ski masks on and hats and gaiters because they don't want people to see their faces. And I'm just like, you basically look like a terrorist. You look like you are part of an illegal hell, and you think that you are on the right side of the law and history.
Good morning, my salacious little sloths. Welcome back to the Boardwalk Podcast. My name is Ansley, and these are my friends, Tess and not Gabe. This is Matt, one of the co-founders of Boardwalk and our CEO's husband.
This is true.
Also the illustrator. He made all these.
Yeah.
He did that. Today, instead of talking about horrible things we're witnessing, because we certainly have no shortage of that, I thought it would be good to maybe talk about some positive things that we're seeing. My positive story I wanted to share starts with my father. We had a phone call last week in which I was able to talk to my dad last week, and I was talking to him kind of about the El Salvadorian prison and what that means and lack of due process. And he was like, oh, is that really what's happening? And I was like, yes, this is really what's happening. The Supreme Court said this. And he goes, was it really the Supreme Court? And I go, yes, the Supreme Court of the nation. And the only reason I'm telling that little story as something positive is because previously I don't think I would have been able to have a discussion with someone where they're like, oh my God, I'm actually going to research this more, especially if they're on a different political spectrum. He's not MAGA. It like healed an almost 16-year-old part of my soul, because that's when I started to like really debate these things, that it was like, no, I'm talking to my father, who I previously never would have been able to get through, and being like, hey, we should all be scared and we should all maybe agree on this. And he's like, oh, thank you for telling me. I've seen your TikToks. Like, I'm gonna research more about this. I'm gonna do something about that. And small change. I don't think it has to be worldwide, but even in your communities and families, I feel like that is a really good place to start.
Especially people who, like you saying he's not MAGA. Like, I think if somebody's not like full on off the deep end in that cult, because that reach. Yeah, those are going to be people who are going to be a little bit easier to reach. It'll still take difficult conversations, maybe, depending on who they are. But I feel like those are good people to talk to.
Yeah. And so it's just like an encouraging thing. Like, you obviously, if you're brainwashed, you're brainwashed. If you don't have empathy, I'm not going to be able to teach it to you. But I think when we unite under the umbrella of, hey, this is really, really bad, not just for non-white people, that maybe people can get more on board with that. Speaking of things that are positive, I want to give my flowers to the governor of Wisconsin, Tony Evers. He has encouraged all of Wisconsin. They're saying he's asking his government agencies to ignore the executive orders. And he's like, no, we're not ignoring the executive orders. But he has said if ICE comes, they will not cooperate unless there is an attorney present, which I think should be just like basic operating in a country where due process is entitled to any single person, because it's our constitutional right, that everyone should be doing that. And it's really, really great to see a state. I don't know if Wisconsin's red or blue.
So historically, it was fairly blue, and then it started to kind of be a little swingier, I would say around the mid-2000s, and it is, I think, actually been a little bit more of a reddish hued purple in probably the last 15 or 20 years. When I was in high school at the time, the thing that we talked about a lot in our AP government class was this legislation that was working its way through Congress called the McCain-Feingold Campaign Finance Reform Bill, which was John McCain and Russ Feingold. And I believe Russ Feingold was an independent who had some kind of socialist leanings. And the fact that the two of them co-sponsored this bill, it was basically to eliminate private money from campaign financing. And it never got passed into law, and that, I think, is the precipitating event that eventually led to Citizens United and all the dark money flowing into U.S. politics. But at the time, Russ Feingold, as I think a senator from Wisconsin, was kind of a voice of reason that, again, was like kind of working together with John McCain, who was a really well-respected Republican from Arizona, on something that they both identified as like being a huge problem. So I think that it can still be a swing state, and we're seeing that, and we've seen that especially in midterm cycles the last several years, where the Republicans might win control of certain legislative bodies at the state level in Wisconsin, but then they try to overreach with some of their policies, and the voters will either through referendum or during standard midterm elections will kind of be like, no, that's too much. So it could go either way, but yeah, I'm glad that Governor Evers is kind of standing up in this way.
Him and Harvard, we also have to give our flowers to Harvard School, building some of the most reputable lawyers in the nation, and Trump administration thinks they're going to win against that. That's crazy. But I wanted to quote Evers because, of course, we have all these Republicans accusing him of breaking federal law. And he said, yeah, that's crap. That's what they say no matter what. We're not encouraging them to break the law. In fact, one of the things that ICE is arresting people for, we're seeing all that, frankly, is not law breaking. And then what do you do? So I think having caution right up front is important. And I really respect that, because when we have one case of a man being wrongfully deported to El Salvador, we have probably many more. And with ICE breaking into people's homes, literal Nazis, literal terrorists, you guys literally should lay down on pavement and not move if you see a car coming. That's my professional opinion. It's great to see someone in a position of power be like, no, we're upholding the law. No one will speak to unless there is an attorney, so you can't fucking bind these people into what? So thank you.
It's very
Governor Evers.
It's very telling with these ICE raids that many, if not all, of the ICE agents are showing up with ski masks on and hats and gaiters because they don't want people to see their faces. And I'm just like, you basically look like a terrorist. You look like you are part of an illegal cartel, and you think that you're on the right side of the law and history. Be serious.
So, no abran las puertas means don't open your doors. If you need that translation to spread to your neighbors, no abran las puertas. That's good. Llame un abrigo. Call a lawyer. That's what you should be telling people. If you see ICE in areas where English may not be spoken dominantly, that's what you can say to eliminate that. Get a bullhorn. This is my new goal. If I see ICE, I'm just going to sit there on this bullhorn and say the most out-of-pocket shit. You want a problem? I'll give you a problem. So just shout out to the people in Congress and in political positions who actually stand up.
I also just wanted to add on to that to continue to contact your representatives so that more representatives can, say things like this and stand up to ICE and, whatever is happening right now.
Tell them to stop making TikToks.
Dude, whoever is running the White House social media pages, you, me, in a bare knuckle fight, 5 minutes uninterrupted, no refs. Give me a chance.
My fun news, and this is about protesting and that protesting works and we should continue to protest. There's been really great turnout across the country, and so we should continue to do that. This past weekend, there was a rally of sorts that was scheduled to happen by Matt Gaetz and the Republican Party. It was supposed to start, or it did start, in West Hollywood, which, if you're not familiar, is the gay neighborhood in Los Angeles County, and it is very blue.
There's rainbow string lights above the streets just to get you a picture.
The street is painted. Some crosswalks are rainbows.
It's not for
It is not
you
for
streets.
them. So that's where it started, and then it was going to be. It started as like a rally in WeHo, and then they were marching down to Beverly Hills. Matt Gaetz was going to be there along with other people. It's a part of the American Restoration Tour and the Walk Away campaign. Specifically, the goal of this campaign is to encourage voters to leave the Democratic Party and join the Republican Party. Is like the main goal of this, is they're being like, oh, there's a way for you to like get out.
Why would they want to? Where are they? What is?
Listen, your guess
You
is
realize
as
you
good
guys
as
are being
mine.
righteously too, right?
So that was the goal, and people caught wind of this, and so there was a counter-protest, and this counter-protest significantly outnumbered the numbers of the MAGA folks who showed up to be like, oh, all of you queer people over here should leave the Democratic Party and join a party that wants you dead?
They said pray the gay away.
Yeah, like what on earth? Matt Gaetz did not show up to WeHo to walk with everyone because of counter protests. I think he still may have spoken in Beverly Hills once they got there, but people dispersed. Showing up and counter protesting, outnumbering them, showing that we're outnumbered is a good thing. And that was the point of that, is that keep showing up, especially do it everywhere, but it's really important, especially at these rallies, because they're showing up to ours to counter protest, but there's not that many of them. Showing that we are outnumbering them is good and important.
I'm very confused by the decision to try and do this in WeHo.
It's so weird.
It's literally just like it is the perfect representation of how they take trans rights and trans issues and gay rights and gay issues, and they put it at the forefront of their fucking Republican agenda, and then they're like, you're shoving it in our fucking faces. You came to West Hollywood. You came to a gay populated area, and it's the same rhetoric of, well, as long as they don't change it into normal people's lives. I'll give you a fucking hint on who put it into quote unquote normal people's lives, and it's not the people that want to be left alone.
They're so obsessed with other people's genitals. It's weird. It's like, one thing that I've observed in the comments on our social media posts over the last probably month, and I think it has been there, but I feel like I'm seeing it more frequently, is a lot of MAGA people, before we block and delete them, will accuse us of engaging in projection.
Dude, I have gotten that before.
And I'm just like, what are you talking about? It's truly wild. Like, so many of the people that are outed and arrested for things like child pornography and,
trafficking,
outside of the bounds of their
marriage, adultery,
Matthew Gaetz,
that guy,
and his weird
mayor of Whoville face,
and his Venmo transactions to underage girls.
It's like they learned the word projection and forgot the word accountability, and have forgotten that even if someone voted the same as you, they might be a really icky person.
Continue to protest, continue to show up, call the world, everyone who are supposed to be representing you, and tell them to show up and actually do their job.
Calling your elected politicians, whether they're a U.S. congressional rep, a U.S. senator, or even local people on your town council, your city council, aldermans, whatever, do it, be consistent. I think most Americans, I don't think, understand just how these people do their job. Politicians, by and large, are empty vessels. They might have ideas for how they would like to help the people in their community, and then they present those on the campaign trail to get elected. But once they get elected, something happens in their brains that makes them want to stay in that seat indefinitely. And it becomes paralyzing, because then the party bosses, the Democratic National Committee, the Republican National Committee, they tell them, okay, you are expected to basically raise this many funds for the national party every single month. And for them to be able to do that, they spend, on average, 6 to 8 hours a day. Not in their office. They're not allowed to fundraise from their office. They have to go to the party headquarters, which is usually down the block from where their office is, and spend it on the phone fundraising, calling people, asking for donations. They don't spend a lot of time actually crafting legislation or meeting with their constituents or anything like that. Most of the legislation that does get passed is written by constituents who actually have a problem, they need to get it solved, and they are the ones that are researching what laws are on the books, and then they're like, this is something that I need you to pass. Higher up the food chain, then it's lobbyists. The lobbyists are the ones writing the bills, and then the senators or the congressional reps are co-sponsoring it, or they're sponsoring it, but they didn't actually write it. The only way that these elected representatives know how to weigh in on an issue is if their constituents let them know. And when you call, when you email, and you tell them, this is a problem for me, this is how I feel about it, you're very rarely going to talk to your elected official. You're probably going to either talk or be emailing with some intern or, maybe a paid staffer whose title is a legislative correspondent or a legislative assistant. And what they do is they don't pass along your full 3-paragraph explanation of why this is a problem. They just put a hash mark on a whiteboard, or maybe if they're really modernized, in a spreadsheet under for or against. That's it. And it can be very unsatisfying sometimes, all the time, when you do go to 5calls.org to figure out how to reach these people. Once you give them a piece of your mind or whatever, they'll say, thank you for reaching out to us. And then you are left with this really kind of that's it. I feel nothing. I don't feel empowered. And unfortunately, yes, that is it. That is the job, though. That's the assignment, and your gratification is delayed. It's not always going to be satisfying when you call or email your elected reps to try and get them to understand what you want them to do, but that's the only way that they know how you feel about something. And you need to do it a lot. You need to be consistent about it, and you need to try and get more people to do it, because the only way that they're going to know which side to fall on an issue is if enough people bug them enough about it that they're like, okay, yeah, you're right. I see that this is a problem for you, and that the majority of the constituents in my district or in my county or in my state or whatever feel this way. So therefore, I'm going to support this, that, or the other, bill that's working its way through Congress.
And so those are our resistance stories, some things that we're excited about. I read Hunger Games and I expected it to be far more exciting, fighting back against a tyrannical government, but I think we're doing a good thing, and things feel really scary right now. So just stick together, keep your heads about you, call your lawmakers, and never shut up. Let's move on to some reviews. This review was left by Robert on our grievance journal. It is great for short writing exercises, really helpful to unload the frustrations. I wanted to speak to that because sometimes if you only have 5 minutes to give yourself for mental health a day, take the 5 minutes. And if you have 5 minutes to vent a day, take the 5 minutes. And if that's all you've got, then the grievance journal is a perfect in-between for venting and de-stressing for a very small section of your day. You never know what those 5 minutes could do for you in the long run. So thanks, Robert. You guys should get a grievance journal, boardwalk.com. And then this comment was left on a Guess Who Said That video, specifically where she was called off-brand Gwyneth Paltrow and I was Bryce Dallas Howard on meth. And some guy commented to our response to being called that and said, yeah, there's probably some sort of community standard violation with this. Let's find out. And to that I say, if you don't want to be told that you're a snot-nosed incel, then maybe stay out of the comment section behaving like a snot-nosed incel. And if you don't want to be roasted on an episode of Guess Who Said That, perhaps stop giving us such inviting content.
It's really just don't comment on somebody's appearance and then expect me to not give it back to you. I think that's what drives me crazy with these things. People are like, oh, I think this about the way you look. And I'm like, okay, well, I think this about the way you look. And then they're like, oh my God, why are you being so mean?
And it's also why would you pick a woman to start an insult battle with when we're literally being told that we're undesirable and ugly from the literal age that we can be perceived? You think we haven't had 50 million comebacks saved in our back pockets for the second some idiot tries to open their yappy little trap and show us their tonsil stones? You think we don't know what to say to that? Get real.
As someone that is not typically on camera with regard to our content, but I do see, if not all of the comments, a lot of the comments, something that's really distressing to me is when men who present as though they are fans of the brand or fans of the content or fans of the creators still do that same thing where they're commenting on your appearances as opposed to the quality of your performing or how funny the scripts are and how great the delivery is. It's just guys, I get that you think that you're being complimentary. And something that you hear from the manosphere and the incels is well, I would be delighted to get complimented. Men are never told anything nice about them. Well, men don't try very hard to make themselves complimentable.
Mm-hmm. Also compliment each other.
Yes.
How about next time you see one of your bros and you think he's rocking a great haircut, you tell him that. Give each other compliments.
Yeah,
Jesus
entered
Christ.
an era where women, a compliment from a woman means so much more to me than it ever did from a dude. So it's like, I'm sorry, I don't care if you think I'm hot. I don't look hot for you. I look hot for Tess.
And she is very hot. And I'm allowed to say that because she invited me to.
Yeah, and I know Tess thinks I'm funny and not just hot.
Yeah, I think also there's this tendency to talk about compliment the article of clothing. Like, oh, those shoes look great on you. That dress looks great on you. Not you look great in that dress. Because then it's just about, you're complimenting their taste as opposed to the meat sack. Yeah, the meat sack that they have no real control over. I mean, what they do is they dress it up just like guys do. Like, I mean, I'm glad I shaved this morning because I was not expecting to be on camera. But like, try to
compliment people for choices that they've made, not things that they can't control.
Exactly.
All right, let's play with our Delve decks.
Yes, let us please. Here, you may take.
Do you want
For
to intro?
our audio listeners, we're moving on to the Delve deck portion, which is my favorite portion of the podcast because we get to talk about ourselves for a little bit. Tess will be started with the venting edition of the Delve deck.
If you could change something about the industry you work in, what would it be?
I would make it less exclusive and much easier for filmmakers and actors to get a start, so it's not the same circle of the same 5 producers who love the same 5 actors who love those actors' children, and it's just like this industry of no growth ever, and everyone is sick of seeing the same fucking faces. So if we could change that and actually get new faces in, because we loved it so much in the 90s, we could do it again. Let's have a 90s revival, babe.
I agree with that. I think that, making it more accessible, making the arts more accessible in general so that it's not just wealthy people who are able to do it, because it's not even like nepotism is obviously a privilege. Having, parents or family or whatever in the industry helps, but it's also just people who have wealthy parents who are able to pay for them to even just like pay your rent in Los Angeles while you take classes, and they pay for those classes and they can pay for a nice education and you get to just focus on doing that. That is a luxury. And we're missing out on a lot of incredible art because people are not being funded. And like, that's what's sad about it. It's not even just for like me. We don't, whatever, I make fine shit, but like we're missing out on really good stuff right now from people who just don't have the money.
I really wish that this tariff situation had been implemented a lot more intelligently because it's, we've got this really cool new product that we're trying to release that is basically just sitting in a warehouse in China right now. And to those who say just make it in America, we can't. Like, the manufacturing doesn't exist here for this product anymore. And we're also not going to be able to afford the tax bill to get it out of the port to actually sell it. And it's not a strategic product or anything like that. So I wish that would have been done differently. Like, I get the argument that we need to reshore certain things for security reasons, but this ain't it in terms of how it's been implemented.
Yeah, something that cripples most of America's businesses. You'd think they would have had more of a second thought, but who are we talking about?
No.
Yep.
And Matt's going to read from the original Delve deck.
Yeah, the darkest grouping in the Delve deck, the OG deck. If you could go back and talk some sense into your teenage self, what would you say? I was actually a pretty well-behaved kid. And that has carried through to my adult life. I'm kind of like a rule follower to a fault. But I did struggle a lot starting around 8th grade and intermittently at different points in high school because of undiagnosed ADHD. And I think I would have gotten a lot better grades, probably been the recipient of, maybe more grant money or scholarships or something like that as a result of that, had I been properly diagnosed and medicated. But because I have the inattentive type as opposed to the hyperactive type, I don't think any of the adults around me really clocked it. And even then, this was in the mid-90s when ADD and then subsequently ADHD was less diagnosed, and I think it was less. It wasn't understood as well. But yeah, if I could go back in time, I would have just said like, hey, you have this thing. You should ask your parents to set up like a consult with a psychiatrist to maybe get you on some meds that could probably help you a lot now and in the future.
I think that younger me just needed a hug and to be told that it would be okay.
Oh.
It's gonna be all right. Hang in there.
I just got diagnosed with ADHD like last year. And I just would never shut up. I was the loudest voice in every room I was ever in. I knew the most. Obviously, I didn't. The same note I've always wanted to give is just sit down and shut up. I just wish little me had a little more like social awareness of how overpowering she was. And like, it's okay to sit down and shut up. Like, I really just wish I'd known that. This is from Middle Joy. This is from our Joy Delve deck. And the question is, what is a minor victory you recently experienced? I am in acting classes, and triggering is one of the biggest things that I have worked on with crying dramatically. And I've been able to do that consistently and like personalize and all that fun stuff. But recently I brought a scene into class that required a full sobbing mental breakdown in the middle of a comedic scene. So it's like the scene happens, there's a trigger, and she's sobbing. And I was able to do that. And then I had a shoot day for fun on Saturday, and I said, like, I want to cry comedically. And they were like, no way you could do that. And I go, watch me. And I cried comedically. And I just think it's nice to have a victory where I'm like, okay, all of this acting stuff is really paying off. Like, I'm good. Cast me. And I'm funny, and I can cry while being funny. And that was a big victory.
We released the third Boardwalk activity book, Bloodthirsty and Bewitched, about a month before Halloween, and it took us a couple of years to figure out the marketing for the first two, but we had a pretty good idea that Bloodthirsty and Bewitched would be successful in a niche kind of way. And I think I was very surprised that of the three, it was very successful right out of the gate as soon as we both released it to our email list, and then when we started running ads for it, to the point where we got really worried that we were gonna like run out of the first like 5,000 copies that we had originally had printed. So I know it wasn't super recent, but you know, it's been about 7 months, and that's the only one that really springs to mind. It's just like being able to finish something and then have it be successful right out of the gate, and more successful than I was anticipating, because you think something that's kind of like witchy and goth themed might not have as broad of an appeal. But it was gratifying to see it be successful on a larger scale than the previous two.
So I am like of the age where I get auditions for moms in commercials. I'm like the correct age to play a mom, but I've never, so I will get called in to audition, but I never get callbacks on them. And it's because I don't think I read as maternal. I frequently get the note, could you do that again and pretend like you like your child? It's not something that I am good at doing. And I just got my first callback for a mom role.
Yay!
And this isn't because I'm like, ooh, I really want to play a mom. No, I want to get paid for those mom roles. But the hack finally came to my brain in this audition where I was like, what if I pretend that the child is my cat?
Personalizing.
And I remember like afterwards I was like, well, probably like I'm like, I don't read as maternal, or like I'm not gonna get it. And then I got that call back and I was like, okay, just gotta pretend the kid is a
Put something there that you actually love.
Yeah.
I would say that's a victory. You also had an ESPN commercial.
Yes, and you had a Honey Live commercial.
We're successful and we're hot. Anyway, well, thanks for hanging out with us on the podcast today. Those are all of our Delve decks, and if you want to take the plunge, you can order yours at boardwalk.com. As for us, we're getting out of here. We love you guys so much. Thanks for hanging out with us. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.